Alright, so today we are testing Helldivers 2 with the RTX 4070 Super. Today we're pairing this GPU with a 14600KF CPU that's running at stock clocks, and then we're pairing that with a DDR4 6400 megatransfers per second CL32 memory as well. I'll put up all the specs on the screen right now. So we'll be doing this in a little bit of a reverse. We are starting our testing at 4K here. You can see this is on the Ultra preset. Let me just go over the settings here quickly. So we're at 4K native and then on the Ultra preset. And although we aren't able to, let me just get all the numbers up here. We're not able to hit 60 frames per second, but I'm actually quite impressed. 4K Ultra native, and we're getting close to 60 frames per second. It's quite warm in this room here, so sorry if you do hear some fan noise. I do have some fans blowing here as well. It's middle of summer. We're going through like a prolonged heat wave. It is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. That's why the GPU is running at around 75 degrees, and the fan speeds are quite high just to keep it below 80. All right, so I'm just going to do a quick short benchmark run just to show what the performance is like. And as you can see, we're not really able to hit 60 frames per second here. So what we can do is just drop this down to either high or medium, or we can enable some upscaling. This game does support its own method of temporal super resolution or temporal upscaling, but let's just drop this down to high and see if we can actually get 60 frames per second here. Alright, so while we are dropping down here, let me just reset the numbers. You can see we gained around 10 frames per second here. Definitely not terrible. I don't think we'll be able to maintain 60 frames per second yet. This is just on the high preset. I actually died again, but I'm just going to, for obvious reasons, cut that out. You can see that we are dropping below 60 frames per second. Not the end of the world, definitely playable. This is a very good looking game, especially at 4K native resolution. But we can also use some upscaling. I think ultra quality, even on the ultra preset, will get us 60 frames per second at all times. So this is definitely not terrible at all, considering it's targeted as a mid-range 1440p GPU. Mid-range when it comes to performance, not necessarily price, but it is what it is, and we are able to maintain 60 frames per second pretty much most of the time. All right, so let's just drop this down to medium and see what kind of performance we get. And we'll play around a little bit with some upscaling, and then we'll drop the resolution. All right, so we'll just apply the medium preset here and see how this goes. So we gain around 5 frames per second, 5 to 10 frames per second for each setting or each preset we drop. That frame time graph is extremely smooth, and it has to be said. I actually did make a video at launch, and the frame time graph was terrible. I've got no idea what this Iron Storm is supposed to be doing. Is it going to kill me? I think it's going to kill me, right? I haven't really played this game in quite a while, but I do think I'm in for some hurting here. But on the medium preset, we should be able to maintain 60 frames per second most of the time as well. And it's doing quite okay at 4K. All right, so I'm just going to enable the high preset again, and then we'll just enable quality mode upscaling and see how it goes. So we are on the ultra preset here, and I've just enabled quality render scale here, right? And this is actually, whoops, I pressed the wrong buttons again. This is actually a pretty good experience, I must say. I killed the brood commander, so I'm actually safe to extract now. But you can see, let me just reset the numbers. I do think we had a little bit of a hitch there. So getting around 80 frames per second 4K on the ultra preset, this is actually commendable. I'm really impressed. I honestly wouldn't mind playing this game at 4K 60 frames per second, even though I personally do prefer a higher refresh rate experience. This is definitely not terrible. I'm actually recording this on a 4K 60 monitor at the moment. It's just without VSync, so you'll see some screen tearing, but and the capture card actually picks that up while recording. But getting 80 frames per second here with 1% and 0.1% lows in the 70s, definitely better than I was expecting. All right, that's enough at 4K. Let's move this down to 1440p. Right, we're at 1440p native on the ultra preset here. Let me just get all these back up and running again. So now you can see we are getting a slightly higher frame rate than what we had at 4K on the ultra preset using quality upscaling. I mean, this is if you do prefer native resolution, it's definitely playable. Getting 90 frames per second here, definitely a very good experience, especially on the ultra preset. You want 100 frames per second plus, then just drop the presets, which we'll be doing just now. I'm just running around like don't comment on my gameplay. As I said, I haven't played this game in quite a while. I've got no friends, so nobody wants to play with me anyway. So I'm stuck with playing this game alone, and it never goes well at all. Right, so this is a native on the ultra preset. As I said, let's just lower the preset a little bit and go down to the high preset quickly. Right, so on the high preset, we were getting around 90 frames per second, right? So now we're getting 100 frames per second. Definitely a good experience. Why am I going to die again? How do I heal? Z X. See, I don't even know. Anyway, so on all the GPUs like a 2060, 2070, I've heard some people complain slightly, and it's understandable. But yeah, we are getting a pretty decent experience at very respectable settings without any upscaling, getting 100 frames per second. It can definitely benefit from some frame generation for those who are running into CPU bottlenecks. But you can see our CPU usage is sitting at around 34%, while our GPU usage is pegged at around 96%. So definitely not CPU bound with this combination of hardware, but frame generation will be able to just push the frame rate a little bit higher, although it will increase your input latency. And maybe some DLSS, official DLSS and FSR support would go a long way with regards to upscaling and image quality, right? But playing like this, we definitely don't need upscaling unless you are looking for 144 plus a refresh rate or frame rate. Alright, so that's it on the high preset. I don't even think it's necessary to go down to the medium preset. The game looks good, the game runs well. So I'm going to go back to the ultra preset and then just enable quality upscaling and see how it goes. Right, so the ultra preset here, and now we'll just use quality upscaling. Got no idea what the render resolution is actually. Anyway, it does look a lot more blurry, just looking at the grass here, trying to get the right buttons here. And now we are getting a high refresh rate experience. I mean, I do see anything 120 frames per second plus as a high refresh rate experience. Nowadays, with the 540 hertz monitors being available, this is on the lower spectrum of high refresh rate experiences, depending on how you look at it anyway. So definitely pretty good experience, but I do think that DLSS and FSR will be able to help with the image quality losses that we are experiencing. Obviously, it might not come across well in the YouTube video, and I think I'm going to I'm going to die again because I got no idea what button is used for heal. Anyway, as you can see, during fighting, our frame rate stays around 120 frames per second as well, so definitely a pretty good experience. All right, but let's drop this down to 1080p if I survive this, for those of you who want an even higher frame rate. All right, so we're now at 1080p native and on the ultra preset again, so let's get all this up and running, and we are pretty much getting the same frame rate as what we had at 1440p ultra with some upscaling. So if you want to get 120 frames per second at native resolution, 1080p is the way to go. Although I do think that 1440p, even with some upscaling, does look slightly better than native 1080p, but I mean, that's just my opinion. But a 1080p native on a 27-inch monitor does look kind of blurry, but that's to be expected. All right, let's drop this down to the high preset. All right, we're now on the high preset, and we gained around 20 frames per second, 20 to 30 frames per second, depending on where we are. We are actually still not CPU bound, and I was expecting us to become CPU bound at 1080p, especially on the high preset, 140 frames per second. But we are still seeing that GPU usage being pegged at 95%, so definitely not CPU bound, and definitely a pretty good experience. So if you want a high refresh rate experience at native, 1080p on the high preset is what'll max out your 144 hertz monitor on RTX 4070 Super. Right, I think that's going to be it for this video. This has actually been a very long recording. I've died quite a lot of times. I'll just edit that out because it's quite embarrassing. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.